All right. Hello, welcome. This is Matt Perlstein from eqforpeace.org. We are in the Positive Mental Health Symposium. Positive mental health. Mental health usually has a kind of negative connotation to it, and we are doing the positive spin to it. We do have to deal with our negative for our mental health, our sadness, our anger, our fear, our stuff like that going down. We've got to learn how to deal with that stuff, and that's what we're talking about partially. But we're also partially wanting to spin it to a more hopeful, more powerful, more positive, if you will, spin on it, so that if we can learn how to deal with our negative stuff, we can do some amazing things and be much more positive. So we have with us Orrin Webb, who's an educator and a EQ coach. He has a real cool way of putting things to, especially to younger folks, make it very real. And so enjoy your talk with him. So Orrin, go ahead, take it away, buddy.
Hey everybody, Orrin Webb here, as Matt said, and I created In Motion, which is a coaching and membership experience on developing emotional intelligence through the use of personality types. Just real quick, you can check it out at inmocean.com. Kind of an interesting name, ENMOCEAN.com. So let us jump into it. And I want to start with, why did I get into emotional intelligence? The first thing is I will share with you all is that I am not predisposed to having emotional intelligence or having a high EQ. In fact, I was predisposed to having a pretty low EQ. Okay. And I'll share more about that as we kind of move through this presentation. But my introduction into emotional intelligence was rather unique in that I was in a job where I was told by a coworker. Okay, now this is pretty interesting. A coworker of mine said that within several months, you're going to hate your manager. You're going to hate this guy here. And I thought to myself, wow, I just started in this job. The last thing I want to do is start a job and hate somebody, especially if they're leading me, right? But lo and behold, after several months, feelings of hatred and anger and really dark emotions started to emerge. And I will tell you all, I am a pretty positive, optimistic guy, and I rarely harbor feelings of hatred and anger. But when I do, they are heavy and they stick around. And why did this happen? This manager happened to be a micromanager, and he triggered me a lot. He controlled me a lot, and he didn't allow me to express myself. And I started to wonder, why is this happening? Right? And so the executive director of that organization's wife happened to be a coach and a specialist in emotional intelligence. And the way in which she introduced our staff to emotional intelligence was through personality, and in particular, the personality type model. And this I found to be very profound in how I learned to apply emotional intelligence in my day-to-day life. So the model that I subscribe to in terms of understanding emotional intelligence, these 4 quadrants or 4 paths, right? Starting with self-awareness. And awareness is a very powerful and meaningful idea for understanding how to detach from your thoughts and feelings and beliefs, and more or less just observe what's going on in your head, what's going on around you, what's going on with other people. And so this awareness is really what I want to focus on today, is because through the expansion of one's self-awareness, that can help somebody recognize and distinguish their emotions. It can help an individual better understand their personality, and it can help someone be more confident in how they assess and view themselves as well as the world. So when we think about our emotions, where do they come from? What are they? Why do we even experience emotions? Now, we could take a neuro path to this and think about our emotions as these neurons firing that trigger sensations in our body. And then, what's also firing with that are thoughts, right? As you said once, Matt, thoughts, feelings, beliefs, and beliefs can lead to actions, and actions then create more thoughts. And, you kind of run that cycle. So as I started to think about emotional intelligence, I began to wonder, why do I have particular thoughts that I run that lead me to feeling particular ways, that then lead me to believing certain things, that then lead me to certain actions, that then lead me to more thoughts? Why did I find that being micromanaged or controlled was so triggering to me? And this thought of being controlled was so triggering to me that it led me to forming feelings of hatred towards this person, that then led me to having a belief that this person was horrible, that then led me to actions of isolating from this person and not respecting them and not working with them as a teammate. And I had to reset, because this was eating away at my mind, eating away at my life. And quite honestly, it made the job horrific. And if you look up stats on why most people quit jobs, it's because of their managers. And why is that? It's strange. It's a very strange, but yet interesting phenomenon. And so what I learned was, through emotional intelligence, I had to develop a new framework or model for how to understand how other people operate. And that is what led me to seeing that people are different. I mean, there's a whole journal on the individual and personal differences, or individual differences rather. And that is the kind of the leading scientific journal on personality. And we are all trying to understand how people form these different ways of seeing things. And what I've come to understand through personality is that personality is a consistent expression of patterns. And these patterns are preferences that we develop early in age, right? Why would a little kid prefer the yellow square rather than the navy circle? Perhaps somewhere in their upbringing, they learned from parents, social conditioning, that the yellow square led to more positive emotions, led to more joy, excitement, enthusiasm, fun. And they may have learned through other experiences that the navy circle led to disappointment, frustration, annoyance, anger. And as these experiences get played over and over again, we start to form these patterns of how we express ourselves based on emotions that we formed at a very young age. And these emotions are tied to preferences. And this is why I found using personality as such an interesting way to approach emotional intelligence, from one, a personalized perspective, but two, it helps us see that personality is just a very complex way of adopting emotions or expressing our emotions. And so when I think about the variety of emotions that we can experience, the variety of meaning that we can create, us consistently having expressions of our behavior, of our mind, that we use or that we express because of certain emotions that we want to experience, that is where personality stems from. Now, what personality model do you use, Oren? And should you use a personality model? I personally subscribe to the Myers-Briggs type indicator model that is rooted in Jungian theory, the theory on personality types. And I found this model very helpful in part because it provided me language to better understand where my positive emotions would be generated from and where more discomforting and negative emotions would stem from. I have an ENTJ preference, meaning when it comes to extroversion, being energized by social interactions and focused on breadth and variety, that stimulates positive emotions in me. If I stay too introverted for too long, I start to get very uncomfortable. And it starts to I start to build more negative or uncomfortable meaning. Now, it's not to say that I don't have introverted tendencies. They are there, but they tend to be associated more with emotions that I find to be uncomfortable. I would go to campuses and talk to students, and I would get so energized. People would be like, man, how are you so enthusiastic? I'm like, man, because when I am interacting and building relationships with a wide variety of human beings, it stimulates my mind. It generates positive emotions in me. But when I would speak to somebody who didn't, kind of flow with conversation, and, you'd make a statement and they would just kind of sit there in silence, I would get very uncomfortable. And I had a friend, a coworker of mine, who was very introverted, and that brought him a lot of joy and peace. But he could very easily sit in front of people, like be in a conversation with you, Matt, and not say a word after you make a comment. And he would not feel any sort of tension. Meanwhile, I'd be on the other side, like, how the heck are you doing that?
I'd be squirming all over. Yeah.
I'd be squirming all over. Exactly. So I found that to be so interesting from a personality difference standpoint. And I also found that particular coworker of mine, when he would be in social settings, would be drained so fast. Social settings where he was not surrounded by people that he was familiar with or have any sort of intimate relation with, he would get drained so quickly. He'd be like, I need to retreat. I need to go into a space where it's just me or a small group of folks that I'm familiar with. So through these life experiences and these observations of how other people prefer to be in terms of this personality model, and then having coupled with this a model for emotional intelligence, I started to see a clear and distinct way of applying emotional intelligence. And I want to get to the core of the personality model that I use, which I believe is very helpful for us in understanding how we can best use emotional intelligence in our lives. So at the core of the Myers-Briggs type indicator are these two pairs that deal with how we tend to process information, sensing and intuition, sensing preferences, preferring facts, details, and bringing the past into the present, intuitive preferences, focusing on connection, possibilities, and bringing the future into the present. Contrast that to how we tend to make decisions. Thinking preferences prefer to reach conclusions based on logic and focusing on being objective and impartial. Feeling preferences preferring to make conclusions based on personal values, relationships, and focusing on empathy and harmony. Now, I hear this often, folks saying, well, you know what? I have all the preferences. I have all of these. In fact, you do. You have all of these within you. But I bet you, if you spent 30 days operating as your opposite, it'd be really interesting to note, how does that make you feel? And now I know Matt, as an ENFP, if Matt had to spend 30 days as an ISTJ and surrounded by nothing but ISTJs, how's Matt going to feel? What type of emotions would Matt be present to or exposed to? I would make a guess. I would hypothesize, if I'm using scientific language here. I would hypothesize that Matt is likely going to be uncomfortable.
You think? Yep.
So coming back to my story around how I went from feeling emotions of hatred and how I got back to neutral, which is more, I consider, being peaceful, being calm, as something I consider that to be more neutral. How I got back to that space was when I learned that the manager who was controlling me, who was belittling me, subordinating me, when I learned that he thought differently than I did, when I learned that he had a different preference, a different way of learning and processing information than I did. And when I discovered that, I began to ask questions. And one of the most powerful things, or most powerful aspects of emotional intelligence, coming back to this diagram here in terms of social awareness, is the practice of being curious, genuinely curious. When you are really emotionally charged, it is hard to practice curiosity. It is easy to judge. It is easy to blame. As the individual earlier before me speaking said, when you're a victim, you ain't asking questions. You're blaming, pointing fingers. You're saying you are casting judgments. You are trying to make the discomfort certain and the blame certain in your mind that it is coming from one particular area. And this is why. And the stories are cemented. But by applying a model and noting the differences between people, you can pause, you can take a breath. Okay. And you can note, this person's operating differently than me. How can I better understand how they operate, how they prefer to be? And if I can take that step, perhaps I can model the way for them to take that step as well. And through taking those steps of being curious towards one another and how we are in our personalities, our preferences, that can give us an opportunity to unpack each other's emotions and to better understand each other's emotions. And through that, we can go from hating one another to being neutral, and eventually even to being positive, to having more positive experiences, more meaningful experiences, and experiences that help us improve our mental health rather than detract from it. So that is my short little breakdown of personality and emotional intelligence. Matt, one of the major learnings I've had, especially in looking at emotional intelligence from this lens of personality, is that everybody's journey is unique and special based on how they've grown and developed. And as I'm on this path, I've realized that emotional intelligence is such a vital framework and skill to apply to your life, to just reduce the probability of staying in negative emotions for too long. As the individual before me said, the longer you are feeling anxious and angry, your body is going to start to adapt to that mental habit. Mm-hmm. It's going to adapt to that way of thinking, and you're always going to be in a state of defense. I gotta react. I gotta be ready for the danger to come. And it's a very difficult way to live, and it certainly can lead to long-term illness, nervous system dysregulation, and a weakened immune system.
Mm-hmm. There's more and more studies showing that connection between the emotions and our body. It's wild.
Yes, indeed. Mm-hmm. Yes, indeed. So for folks that are interested in learning more about how I apply this dual framework of emotional intelligence and personality type, definitely check out InMotion.com. I'm on a path. I was talking to Matt the other day. I'm on a path to bring as many folks, in particular, young, early career professionals, early career managers, into this world of the application of emotional intelligence, because Lord knows we need more people, right? And by 2050, let's have, the majority of human beings being able to exercise the skill that is emotional intelligence. because it is absolutely needed.
It is. It is. It's not funny anymore. It used to be a nice to have skill, but now we're talking coping skills, life or
Yep.
death kind of stuff. It's incredible. So thank you
Absolutely.
for doing all that and all that you do. And you're reaching the younger folks that are so critical. That's where most of the problems are. The suicide rate and the depression rate is just amazing now. They're saying like over half of our population, this is the United States, but it's bad everywhere. Over half of our people have like a diagnosable mental illness now. And God
Yeah.
dang, man, how are we supposed to function? Wow.
Yeah,
And
it's really challenging. Yeah.
it is. And like you're saying, that it's a lot of it is understanding or lack of understanding about ourselves. We don't even know how we work because our school system, in my opinion, our school system is not teaching us right now. And it's moving in
Yeah.
that direction out of need. But man, we're way
Yeah.
behind. And so that's why we're doing this, jumping up and down about this, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. On the positive mental health path. And, it's, as you shared, I've often shared with folks, like, where have you taken a class on self-discovery and understanding
There you
how
go.
you operate? And, and like, luckily for me, I got exposed to philosophy pretty early. Plato's Cave, reading about Socrates, and just reading in philosophy helped me learn how to critically think about myself, existentialism, right? Moral philosophy, etc. It really helped me gain skills to ask better questions. But even then, that wasn't enough for me to sustain positive mental health. I needed more models in place. I needed tools. I needed practices. And thankfully, learning about emotional intelligence really helped me, because after I learned about my personality, Matt, I realized that the most unconscious part of myself is more of my feeling side. It is one of the more underdeveloped aspects of my personality. And when I realized that, I was like, hey, you know what? It's time to grow, baby. It's time to grow. It's time to lean in, And a lot of guys, according to the personality data, a lot of guys introvert their emotions. They keep it within. I think on the worst case, they repress it. Probably in the most common case, they don't really express it to a lot of people. Maybe they express it to one person, right? Or maybe they don't express it at all. And that there's such a danger in not being able to express what things mean to you and how they make you feel, because it can get chaotic. It can get very chaotic. So let's continue to do the work, y'all. We are making moves.
Yeah, for sure. I really like that, what you just said about a repression versus non-expression. It's a little bit different, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And repression can be pretty ugly. So yeah, you're right. Especially guys, just like you're saying, we don't know. We never talked about it before. We didn't learn about it. We didn't talk about it. Our parents didn't talk about it. How the heck are we supposed to know this stuff? And so, like you said, where did you ever take a class in self-awareness? Well, not very often, but now they're out there and now we're doing it. So yay, us.
That's right. There we go. Matt,
Right
thank
on.
you so
All right,
much.
rock and roll. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for stopping by and thanks for all you're doing, and keep doing it. We really need to reach the audience that you're talking to. So we'll hopefully we can do something together, bud. All right.
All right, we'll be in touch.
We'll talk to
Take
you
care.
soon. All right. Thanks.